Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's live discussion. We're here to talk about Star Trek Picard Season 1 with a particular focus on the last 5 episodes of Season 1. I'm joined here by special guests, the usual crowd as you see them all the time. First of all, Don Willi. Haven't done many of these in a while, so it's really good to see you again, man. Thanks for joining for this one.
Thanks for having me as always. You know what? Mass Effect parts 1 and 2 were great games, and part three was great until like the last third. So it's gonna be interesting just to have a retrospective on this game. Hey, what's so funny? I don't get what's funny about that. We're talking about Mass Effect, right?
Well, basically, talking about Star Trek Picard.
Oh my God! I couldn't. Oh man, the plot is so similar. Didn't even realize.
All right, and also joining me, of course, Akton Tamko. As always, thanks so much for joining.
Hello, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Cool. All right, so let's get into this. Let's start with our overall feelings. Now that the season's over, we got a full picture of what the show is like. What are our overall feelings? Like it, not like it, kind of somewhere in between. Apkin, I'll start with you. What are your feelings on season 1?
Okay, well, I'll let Don do this talk on Mass Effect. I had never heard of Mass Effect till 5 minutes ago, so that means nothing to me. I'll just talk about the show itself. And I liked it overall. In fact, I would say that I can't think of a better first season of a Star Trek show, but first seasons usually suck, so that's not saying a whole lot. I think that the overall story arc, when you look at Picard's story arc, particularly how he was obsessed with data and he was guilty about the whole synth ban and all of that stuff, was really wrapped up beautifully in the end with the data scene. Was fantastic. So our main character, our title character, had a great, really well done story arc. When you start to put the microscope in on some of the details of the plot as we go, there are definitely a lot of problems. Mark and I have each talked about them in our reviews. I think there's a lot of plot conveniences, and the plot conveniences speak to poor writing. So there's a lot of sloppy writing. Once you hone in on the details, but if you take a step back and look at the overall, I feel pretty satisfied. Hopefully some of that, the poor writing, they can clean up in season 2, hopefully. But overall, I still feel pretty good about it.
Cool. And Don, what did you feel about Star Trek Picard season 1?
Star Trek Picard Season 1. It's better than Discovery.
All right, that's all you have to say.
I know we're going to get into details later, so I'll give my thoughts on it. I mean, listen, it wasn't horrible. It isn't the best Star Trek, but I think it's moving in the right direction. So yeah, well, when we get to the specifics, I'll talk more.
All right, so my overall thoughts on season 1, because it's funny. I know, Apkin, you were saying when you did your weekly reviews, you would watch each episode twice, where I only watch each episode once. But I recently, over the past couple of days after the finale came out, went back and rewatched the whole season from start to finish, and to kind of get a clearer picture of the season as a whole. And I think the conclusion I come to is that it's very poor pacing. It's not like really a cohesive story. It seems to just bip and bob. And also rewatching, I got a clearer picture that some of these characters, particularly Elnor, they don't do anything with them really. They just introduce them, and then all of a sudden they act like you know them very well through and through, as if they were been in the show for years and years, where really they don't take the time to really flesh out or develop these characters at all. Now, there's moments in the show that I love that I think are way better than anything Discovery did, and better than a lot of season 1. But it doesn't come together in a cohesive overall story. It kind of is, the pacing's really off. and that because the first batch of episodes were kind of like slowly building up, and then they get to the finale and sprint and just start running, just rush through that ending bit. And also, I agree with Avkin that there's a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of little plot holes and stuff you can point at. So I still am unsure of what I'm going to give this as a rating, so I won't ask you guys, but it's going to be somewhere kind of in the middle, because there's some things that I really love, but when I look at the season as a whole, I think it kind of fails to tell a complete story. But I wouldn't call it a complete failure, because there's stuff that is just so damn good in this show. So it's a really discombobulated, hard thing to judge. But anyway, cool. So let's get into some of the specific storylines now. So yeah, so we can run through some of the storylines in the second half of the season. I want to start back at episode 6 with Hugh and Picard on the Borg ship, and sort of running into everything about also having to do with Soji and Narek on the Borg ship. Like, you know, Narek trying to convince Soji to find a home planet, and Picard's reuniting with Hugh and all that sort of thing. And so yeah, I mean, this deals most with episode 6 basically. But I don't know, like, I actually appreciate this episode a bit more when watching it again. But I think some of the interactions between Picard and Hugh seemed a bit unearned to me, because they were acting like they were really good friends, but they only like met in that one episode. Once I don't know. I guess Picard helped Hugh liberate from the Borg, but that was mainly Geordi. I don't know. But and as far as the Soji and Narek stuff go, like, this would definitely bothered me the most for the first half of the season. Their storyline was definitely the worst aspect of the show, until this episode, where this episode was actually decent, but all the build up to it seemed a bit unnecessary, like them sliding through the snow and the ice skating or whatever bullshit that was. But it actually, I kind of like the payoff here, and I like the repercussions going forward. So actually, I come to appreciate the storyline a bit more. Apkin, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I kind of talked about that in my reviews of why that storyline sucked for the first 5 episodes, because they were trying to have it go at the same pace with the Picard storyline so that they could all come together in episode 6. But Picard storyline had so much more to do. Like, he had to go and he had to get Raffi and Rios. He had to go get Elnor, and then they had to go meet 7 of 9, and they had all of this stuff to jam pack into Picard's storyline, which is running concurrently with the Soji and Narek storyline. Like, it couldn't really advance until Picard got there, and they had shit to do. Like, I mean, we needed to find out about Ramda and the whole, you know, apocalypse thing. That's about it. So they had like 5 episodes to fill with no storyline whatsoever, and mercifully they sat out in episode 5 entirely. So that's kind of why I felt their storyline was very, very thin, because they had nothing to do in it, and yet because they had to wait from a storytelling perspective, you had to wait for Picard to get to the Borg cube in order for their story to move forward. They're just kind of just hanging out for 4 episodes, like doing nothing, basically, which is why I think their storyline in the first half of the season was pretty terrible. But yeah, I was in that episode, I was very happy to finally see they're going somewhere. Now, I'm sure we're going to get into Narek in general a little bit more. So should I save that for later? Because I have some thoughts on Narek and as a whole as a character. But Mark, you're muted. Mark, you're muted. Can't hear you.
Yeah, we'll get into him a bit more later on.
Okay. So, but as far as just this thing with Soji in that episode, yes, that was a good payoff. I mean, it was just the way that the two concurrent storylines were pieced together just didn't work, and that's why their storyline was so boring for so long. As far as the Picard and Hugh stuff, though, I don't know. I thought it was earned because Picard's presence was a huge part of Hugh's life, even though he was more directly related to Geordi. Like, Picard's the one who made the decision, and Hugh knows that, and they both have that connection of having been Borg. So they just, I think there's just brotherhood of XBs that they're a part of. So I had no issues with that. I thought it was pretty touching, to tell you the truth, the Picard and Hugh reunion. But it would have been better if it was a Geordi reunion. But as I said in my review, in Descent Part 1 and 2, Hugh's hanging out with Riker and frickin' Worf, who he never interacted with in Iborg. So this is like par for the course. Hugh only reunites with people who aren't Geordi. Like, that's just, he'll just never, well, obviously he's dead now, so he'll just never ever see Geordi again.
Yeah, no, I do agree though. Picard definitely has more connection with Hugh than Riker and Worf did. But Descent was horrible. Anyway, Don, your thoughts on this storyline?
Locutus? Oh my god. All right. Look. I understand they're trying to have some levity, with some of these situations. I'll be honest with you, there was a lot that I hated about the Borg Reclamation Project and the New Romulans anyway. But then when, Picard is like, Hugh, thank you so much for helping me with this. We have to go and find Soji. And they're running through the damn corridors looking for it, and some random dude was like, Locutus? I'm like, what the fuck was that? All right. Anyways, look, I liked Hugh a lot. I was sad to see him go the way that he did. I think he deserved better. Hugh deserved a lot better than to just,
we're gonna get to that a bit later on.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, look, Picard and Hugh, I like those two together. I think that the story centering around Picard and him having interactions with past characters was good, especially Hugh, because this was somebody who, in the Next Generation, when we see him, he was, so much against him for like the first half of the episode until he was like, and he was like, I'm sorry, you said I. Holy shit, you're a different kind of Borg, aren't you? So, to see him after all these years, now Hugh looks a lot more human. He's a lot more individualistic than he even was back then. So, yeah, I mean, I think it helps to establish backstory and to kind of build out the world a little bit. And I wish they could have had more time together, but I'll let you move along with it.
So you thought their interactions worked for you, Hugh and Picard?
Yeah, for me, I think it worked well for me in particular.
I didn't have too big of an issue with it. It was just maybe a slight feeling that it was a bit unearned, but I was mostly okay with it. Like, I did buy that Hugh would go out of his way to help Picard. Like, that totally makes sense. But I want to talk about the thing you brought up about the Locutus. Is that you? Because I don't know. I didn't think it was the dumbest thing ever, but that kind of irked me a little bit, because particularly like getting to other parts where Seven and Picard often relate to each other. Like, oh yes, we were both ex-Borgs in the way Picard relates to Hugh. Yes, you know what it means to. Picard was like a Borg for like a month. These people were Borg for like decades. So I think the comparison's a bit ridiculous, personally.
I mean, he was such a huge Borg, though. I mean, he was very important because he's a character.
I mean, well, you know what, though? For me, the whole XBs thing, I think, you know what? I'm going to get into a little bit later about what I guess a lot of longtime fans have issues with when it comes to what people consider to be new Trek or whatever, but XBs to me is one of those things. But yeah, I'll let you guys take it away for right now. I don't want to rant.
Mark, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Storyline, because my biggest complaint, actually, you didn't touch on it, was that in that storyline, Picard was like, "Hurry! We've got to save Soji right now. Oh, but first, let's take a tour of the XP." Picard can have that moment where he's like, "Oh, thank you, Hugh. You're doing a great thing here. I am totally okay with everything that the Borg did now. I kind of understand the Borg now." Like, it was just, I like what they were going for there with Picard getting that, revelation that the Borg are victims, but it was so crammed in there, it didn't fit. Like, because literally it was like, "Oh, well, hurry up, let's go save Soji, and let's stop and do a little tour of the XBs first." Like, so that Picard could have that moment. That was actually my biggest complaint.
No, I actually agree with that. It definitely was out of place. Also, I want to talk about, there's a complaint that I think you had it as well, and I think a few other reviewers had about this episode at the end, where Picard and Soji escaped through that little teleporter thingy, and I was constantly complaining, like, why the fuck did Hugh and Elnor not go with them? But when I watched it again, I actually noticed that they said that they need to erase the logs so that Narissa and the other people can't find out where they went. So someone needs to stay behind to erase the logs. So I think that explains Hugh. But as far as Elnor goes, I guess Elnor needs to stay back to protect Hugh so he has time to erase the logs. I guess that would make sense. But the way they phrased it didn't make sense, because it was like, he's like, Eldon was like, "I need to stay behind to protect you," which doesn't make sense. He's actually protecting Hugh. Like, to stay, it seems like he would protect Picard more if he went with him. But I don't know. It did make a bit more sense to me when I got that. Okay. But I don't know.
Are we going to talk more about Elnor? Because I have.
Oh yeah, we got a whole nother section for Elnor.
Yeah, all right, I'll save it because I got some problems with his story.
Okay. But this one thing in particular, does that make a bit more sense about why Elnor and Hugh didn't go with them?
Well, but that makes sense why Hugh didn't go.
Yeah.
And I guess you can kind of say, well, Elnor needed to protect him. He still should have gone on the La Serenea, though. So that's yes. What I'll save. I'll save for another thing. I'm sure we'll get to that.
Absolutely, yeah. All right. Let's see. Stephen Podsishi, sorry if I pronounced that wrong in the chat. Nice to see the panel, though it's late for me to watch tonight, and we'll catch up. Enjoyed most of the episodes first watch. First 3 episodes were intro, next 5 set up, and then watched the last 2. Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying earlier. Definitely agree with that. And also we got Stephen Kennedy in the chat saying Picard is 7 out of 10 for the season as a whole. I don't think I will watch season 3 of Discovery, as the best 2 characters in the season will be gone, Pike and Spock. All the other characters are either crap or boring. It's Discovery. I don't know. I don't know if I'd go as high as 7 out of 10. Maybe. I don't know. I have to think about that. But anyway, let's go ahead and move over to the next storyline, which is getting into episode 7, just focusing on Picard and Soji going to Nepenthe, hanging out with Riker and Troy. And I still think this is by far definitely one of the best. I don't know, the best, maybe the best, because there's also the Picard and Data thing at the end of the season, which we'll get to later. But I think this was a longer storyline, so I think I'd count this as the best sort of storyline that the show has done. I thought it was so well earned. I thought the chemistry between Riker and Picard felt so natural, so at home. I mean, it's different than what they had before, but that's because they're older and not in Starfleet anymore. They're no longer captain and first officer. And so this seems like such a natural progression, and it really progresses the characters. And I said in my review that I thought this was the best Counselor Troy has ever been in the history of her appearing in Star Trek. And I totally stand by that. I think the stuff she was saying about Picard, when Picard is like being a dick to Soji, she's like, "You're an asshole. You deserve that," because she's suffering through that. I mean, she was actually being a counselor and using her her counseling skills for once. I don't think she's ever really done that to other, be like, "Captain, I sense something's off." Like, she was actually being useful. And the whole storyline with Riker making the pizza and everything, and how Riker could guess exactly what Picard's mission was without him saying anything. This is amazing. I think this is this was the show at its best. And as I said in my review, I think the show does this character stuff much better than it does the plot heavy stuff. But anyway, Don, we'll go to you first. Your thoughts on this whole Riker storyline?
I thought it was interesting. Now I guess he's in semi-retirement because he did say he's kind of on active reserve and he could jump in the fight at any time if he wanted to. It's good to see him and Deanna are still around. It was a little weird, the whole thing of them having a son that, died because of the ban on development of synthetics, though, because, excuse me. I mean, for one, obviously this is a character we have never met, and it looks like we will never meet. And it's just kind of odd that it's like, oh, him and Picard had kind of a relationship a little bit, but we know Picard is always kind of uncomfortable around kids. And how long ago was it that he died? Because I don't think they necessarily gave us a time frame. They just said he would have been 18 at this time in the show. Yeah, so I mean, I think they did a good job of kind of fleshing out his character, even though he, technically we've never actually met him. And Picard getting dressed down by Counselor Troy. Fascinating, to quote Mr. Spock. Yeah, because we've never seen Counselor Troy really kind of dig into somebody when they really deserved it. It's more been like, sit down, let me talk to you. What are your thoughts? Hold on, I think I can feel something coming off of you. And it's like, no, they finally gave her something to actually do. I like the whole family dynamic that the Rikers had, and the fact that they really tried to get Soji on board with what was going on, but they were very understanding of the fact that she had went through a traumatic situation and that it wasn't going to be easy for her to trust anybody. Their daughter was an interesting character though too, because she was trying to explain to Soji like, hey, you have somebody who's here willing to help you, and you shouldn't just be willing you shouldn't just be willing to throw that away, because how many people out there don't actually get the help that they need or deserve? So I mean that was kind of a cool thing, but I don't want to go on for too long.
Yep. So Adkin, your thoughts on the whole Riker thing?
Yeah, I would agree. It's probably the best episode this episode of the series thus far. And as for Troy dressing down Picard, so she would have been honest with Picard in the past, but she would have been very careful about it. She would just been like, permission to speak freely, sir. And she would have been worded it very carefully. And because he was still her commanding officer at that time. And I actually looked at that episode overall. In general, it was very fun to see how their friendships have changed now that Picard is no longer their commanding officer and hasn't been in a while. And clearly that they have had contact with each other over the years. We see a picture of Picard holding their baby. So they have been in touch. And they've developed a whole new kind of relationship where now that he's no longer the commanding officer, they don't have to be like, permission to speak freely, sir, and be careful how they word things. I felt Riker was doing that too. He was just like, quite frankly, I just don't think you're up for this. I don't think that Riker would have been as upfront with Picard on Next Generation either, because he was their commanding officer at the time. You got these certain dynamics when you are the underlings on a starship and that's your commanding officer. But then when he's no longer the commanding officer and he's now their friend, then it's a whole different ballgame. So to me, it was very fun seeing how the dynamics had changed between Picard and Riker and Troy, both of them, now that they were no longer, he's no longer their commanding officer, that they're just friends now. That was really fun for me. And I agree with you, Mark. That was one of the best counselor Troy has ever done, because she was always like tiptoeing around things. And I was never a huge Counselor Troy fan. I didn't like. There was no character in Next Generation I would say that I really despised, but I think she was always probably my least favorite. I never was a huge fan of her character. But so
not even Wesley.
Well, first season Wesley, yeah, where he saved the day every time. But Wesley wasn't on the show the whole time, so and like by the third and fourth season when he was wearing the red uniform, he was more like he was fine. But for first and second season Wesley, it was just more how he was written, like how he saved the day all the time, and everybody in the Enterprise were morons, especially in the first season. Like there were several episodes like that drove me crazy. But just overall, look at the whole 7-season scope, and the episodes that focused on Counselor Troy, most of them are some of my least favorite episodes. So this is probably my favorite Counselor Troy episode as well. And also I agree with what Don was saying about the son. I agree. I don't think we ever got like a clear timeline of when he passed away. If he would have been 18, I don't know how old the daughter was, Kesla, but she was old enough to miss him. So couldn't have been, my feeling was it couldn't have been that long ago that he passed away. Like no more than 5 or 6 years, but that's just a guess. But I thought he was a very well-developed character for someone we never met. How he invented all these languages and all these different societies, and all. I thought it. And the actress who played the daughter was very good too. It just felt, everything about that family just felt really real and organic, and like you cared for them, even though they were only in one episode. So, everything about that I thought was very, very good.
Now, what about the Soji aspect of this storyline? Because I like that too. I liked how she wasn't really willing to trust Picard, and she had to be she was on the fence, and they could have kind of had to win her over. And I like the interactions between Kestra and Soji. I thought they went a long way to helping. But it seemed like to me that she accepted being an android rather quickly. It seems like that would be a harder thing for someone to accept if they didn't think they were an android.
Yeah, I mean, or if you're talking about this particular episode.
Yeah, this particular episode.
I loved that she didn't automatically just say, "Oh, okay, Picard, we're best buddies now," because that it would have been so easy. I feel like there's been so many shows and movies that have done that, where they just kind of skip over all of that. The natural distrust that she would have, and it took her a little while. As far as her like quickly coming to terms with her being an android, yeah, I don't know. I'm not too concerned about that. I just kind of brush it off she's starting to get more android memories are starting to come up. So whatever. I'm not. That's not one of the nits I have to pick.
Okay. I don't know. Rewatching the show again, though, I think because I realized with Daj, she had this inherent program to trust Picard. So it seems like it was something that Maddox maybe programmed into her to trust Picard, and because she had this inherent, I trust you, I'm going to go to you. So how come Soji? It seems like Soji should have that same sort of inherent thing. That was my only nitpick. That if Daj has it, why not? Why doesn't Soji have it?
Well, it seemed like that was specifically activated for Daj.
No.
Go seek out Picard. Like all of a sudden, she saw all these Picard images, and I have to go find this person. Whereas Soji never got that.
No, I suppose that could, yeah.
Listen, there's so much about the whole Daj Soji thing that is still left on the table that I don't think we're ever going to get to explore.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and move over to the next storyline. Sticking with this episode, let's get to the whole thing about the La Serena, getting chased by Narek and Jurati, going a bit crazy with guilt and eventually poisoning herself. And the whole time that Rio's thinking that Raffi was the spy. This kind of brought the episode down a little bit for me because I didn't like it. I didn't buy that Rios was that stupid to think that Raffi was the spy when it was beyond obvious, especially the way Girardi was acting, clearly she was the spy. I don't know. This could be a case of, because I'm the audience member and I knew that she was the spy, that maybe it's obvious to me, but maybe it wouldn't be so obvious to the characters in the story. But I think it would be. I think the way she was acting was making it clearly obvious. She was like very nervous and blah, 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 or whatever, even more so than usual. I don't know. Akton, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that one. It didn't make any sense. In fact, for the longest time, I was like, no, he doesn't really think that, does he? He's just like playing Agnes. But I think we are meant to believe from the show that he did really believe that, which makes no sense. Okay, maybe he doesn't know Agnes well enough to pick up on all of that, but why would he think Raffi? That just made no sense. That was another example of like this plot convenience that the show likes to employ, that we can't have Rios knowing about Girardi, so we'll pretend that he thinks it's Raffi, which made absolutely no sense whatsoever. Yeah, that is definitely something that bothered me as well. The rest of it I was okay with, but that particular scene with Rios, that definitely did not sit well with me.
Don, your thoughts on this?
Okay, first off, is it me? I don't know if you guys have seen Alison Pill in anything else. She was in this show on HBO called Newsroom, where she played a very kind of similar character. And, you know, shout out to Cardinal Doomsday. Yeah, she reminds me way too much of Tilly. All right. I the whole jittery, you know, kind of babe in the woods, deer in the headlights kind of thing that she's got going on half the damn time. I'm just like, oh God, I'm so over her. Then, you know, yeah, exactly what you guys were saying about how see, and I can't even remember the dude's name. I just call him Machismo. God damn, what the hell is the guy's name who runs the last?
Rios?
Yes,
Rios.
Yeah, Captain Machismo. All right. Yeah, I mean, he's sitting up there like, hey, can I tell you something? I think my oldest friend on this ship might secretly be a spy. And she's like, I wonder why do I think that? Yeah. I'm like, what the hell? Who thought that was a good idea? And I'm just like, all right. And he's like, oh well, yeah, because she went off and did some stuff and came back, and now we got a Romulan chasing us. Okay, so because she went off on her own and there's a Romulan chasing you guys now, that means that she must secretly be a spy and she doesn't know it. Yeah, as paranoid as she is about Romulans, especially for almost the past 20 years, I don't know, maybe she might want to keep away and make sure she doesn't get tagged by a goddamn Romulan. I just, you know what? No, I can't. No. Take it away.
Okay, I have one more thing, Mark.
Hey, go ahead.
Yeah. Another thing about that, I forgot to mention. I mentioned this in my review originally, but like what Don was just saying about how he was like, oh, well, she just snuck off for a little while. And he said, like, we don't have any idea where she went. But in the previous episode, they had this whole heart-to-heart about her son. And I guess she didn't specifically say that she went to see her son, but I thought it was very strongly implied. Like he should have picked that up. Like he should have figured out that that's where she was. I thought that, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say because I'm an audience member who saw her go see her son, but it seemed to me like he should have been smart enough to know that that's what she was saying. I went down to see my son just now. So this whole thing where he was like, oh, we don't know where she really was the whole time. Like I didn't buy that. Like, yes, you do. She told you. So that I had a very hard time with that as well.
One other thing I gotta say though is with this storyline is I don't know if I completely buy Girardi's turn. Because at the start of the episode, she was like, "Oh fuck it! Why are we even going after Picard? Fuck him and the android. We don't know anything about him. Let's just leave him alone. Let's go home. I want to go home." And then all of a sudden, and then towards the end of the episode, she's practically risking her own life to destroy the beacon, whatever. I don't know if I buy the fact that she went from killing her lover because she was so haunted by this vision to all of a sudden willing to risk her own life to protect the android or whatever, or at least to protect the crew. I don't know. I don't know.
I'm gonna go in later. I'm gonna go in so hard.
Well, I disagree with both of you on that.
All right,
I thought it was pretty well developed personally, but that's fine.
Do you have any more specific to say? You just thought it worked for you?
Yeah. Are we getting into this now? We can get into. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, no. Well, okay, it's the next storyline I want to get into deals with this as well, so we can jump into this.
Okay. I just try not to get ahead of our
Yeah, no worries. So the next storyline I want to get into is the next episode when Picard comes back to the La Sirena. I'll deal with the Rio stuff later. At the moment, I'm going to focus on Picard and Jurati and her confessing to him, and then Soji's meeting with Jurati, where Jurati's like, "Oh, you're so beautiful to me," or whatever the hell she says. Like, all right, I'll let you go first, Akton. You can. Your thoughts on this one?
Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. Say that again.
Oh, so the whole thing.
Well, just basic. What are we talking about?
So we're talking about the storyline where Picard comes back to the La Sirena and meets up with Jurati, and Jurati's having her, he gets her to confess, and eventually Jurati meets with Soji, and she says, "Oh, you're so beautiful to me," and all that. Like focusing on that, like we'll get to the Rio stuff later.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's very conflicted. I think if anything, I would less buy that she would be so against androids in the first place. Or that just seeing the one vision would convince her that much. So I think I would probably be less buying of that aspect of it than the aspect of her. It's her life's work, and in the first episode, when Picard first meets her, like she's, "Oh, I really wish I could have met Dodge." Like this, I mean, it's her dream come true. So this part of it, I actually really buy. I think I probably would less buy that she would be so convinced just by one mind meld. And the only way I convince myself of that is, well, she's not like, a trained Starfleet officer. She's very weak-willed, weak-minded. And so she was very easily susceptible to that mind meld. So that's how I kind of, rectify that. But as far as her then like reacting the way she did to Soji, I mean that is consistent with who she is. That's was established in the first episode.
Yeah, I guess my thing is that it would be consistent if they never had her kill Bruce Maddox. I think
right.
I think the fact that I'm willing to buy that she went that this threat like causes people to go insane, and she thought that all life was in danger in the whole, and she was haunted by this. She would go as far as to kill Bruce Maddox. I can buy she would go from appreciating androids to that point. I don't buy that she goes back to appreciating androids after going, because if she has to go that far where she's willing to kill her own lover, I think it would take a hell of a lot more to bring her back to her true self, who she was before that vision fucked her up. Unless the vision is like maybe just temporarily makes you go insane and then it goes away, but I didn't get the impression that was the case with it.
Yeah, I just feel like that is more to her core as who she is. Like that makes more sense to me that she would react that way. I don't buy that she was changed so quickly to the point where she would kill Bruce Maddox. The killing Bruce Maddox part is I think the part that I have the hardest problem with, that she would do that. I think this is where I have the hardest so for her to go back to who she is, like it's not a problem. The fact that she went away way out insane in the first place is more where I have the issue, rather than her coming back to like the core person, human being that she actually is. Like she should have stayed in that who she is the whole time is more.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Definitely agree with you there. But I can buy that she would go as far to go and say to kill Bruce. I just couldn't buy that she would come back from that so quickly.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with that.
But anyway, Don, your thoughts on this?
Okay, so she kills Bruce Maddox, and they're just gonna sweep that shit under the rug because since he was kind of a villain when we first met him, he's irredeemable now. So fuck him. He was a drunk asshole anyway, right? All right. God damn it! Really, why do we have this character on the show? Seriously, there's so much that could have been done without her. Commodore O and the Jad Vash and whoever the fuck else could have found some other way to track Picard and the androids or whatever. I'm really annoyed by this character. Seriously, everything that she does, everything about her being is just annoying. She's sitting up there fucking crying about killing Bruce Maddox. And it's like, no, you didn't even try to convince him that the androids needed to be destroyed. It was just like, oh man, I saw this wacky vision from an old video game from back in the 20th century, and I gotta kill you now. Oh my fucking god. And then after that, I was like, oh man, I realized the error of my ways. You're so beautiful, you're so hot. Do you want to be my robot girlfriend now? I mean, I killed your dad and all that, but hey, it's all good. We're good, right? We're good, huh? Mother.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think regardless of where you stick the specific blame, I think the storyline as a whole didn't quite work. But it's just me. All right.
Well, I'm just going to state for the record, I strongly disagree with both Cardinal Doomsday and Don. I actually really like this character. But we could
about hating the character.
Hating the character. I thought she worked well. I thought she was really well developed. I liked that she was both quirky and scientific, and she was a very well-rounded character. So you guys are Cardinal Doomsday. I disagree with you.
No. Listen, we already got Tilly. We don't need Tilly 2.0. And then if
I don't have as much problem as Tilly as everybody else does either. Like, she's not my favorite, but she's my favorite, like, that type of character. Like, I like it better than Harry Kim. I like it better than Travis. I like any of the Wesley Crusher, any of those instances. Not that that's a high bar to clear.
I'm sorry, better than Harry Kim?
Yeah, Harry Kim was my least favorite character ever. I freaking hate Harry Kim. So he's like a worthless character. Why does let's not get on to
we're not talking about Voyager. I think the actor is great. I think he was underwritten and written poorly. But anyway, that's getting off track.
Yeah. I mean, I knew either way. Yeah, man. Listen, I can't with Tweak, because that's who she reminds me of. Tweak from South Park.
Well, I will say I like her better than Tilly. I'll say that for the record.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not saying I like Tilly. I'm just saying I don't hate her as much as
Yeah. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the next storyline I want to get to is keeping with the same episode. Let's get into Rios dealing with his dark past and the revelation of his former captain, meeting the, what was it, Jana, the other android version of Sergi, like a precursor one, and how that ties into the story. And then Raffi trying to figure out what's wrong with Rios and getting help from all the EMHs. So I guess we can start with the EMHs first thing, because at first, the EMHs never really bothered me all that much. They seemed kind of unnecessary. I didn't really care about them either way until this episode where I fucking hated them. I thought it was ridiculous. I hated the whole storyline with Raffi sitting down with 5 of them and they all have different accents and the actor's just trying to show off his acting chops or whatever. And I think the scene was not well made. It wasn't well structured or well created. I didn't care about the quirkiness. I didn't find it funny. A lot of the accents, different accents, I just didn't understand. And we haven't talked about this yet. This is something me and Apkin talked about in our last review. Don, so you might not be aware of that. I do not like the character of Raffi, and that hasn't changed. She's the one I would point to more than Girardi. Actually, is the one I don't like because I think she's a walking, talking cliche. And plus, she went from being depressed and drinking herself to death to all of a sudden in this episode being all not giving a shit. But whatever, that's getting a bit off topic. So I hated that part of it, but the part where Rios reveals his dark past, I liked it. I thought that was a nice moment. I think they could have ditched the whole EMH storyline, which is a waste of time, and just jumped straight to this. But it is quite serendipitous, quite a coincidence that his dark past just so happens to tie directly into the plot of the show. That's a bit, I don't know, that is a bit very convenient for me. But anyway, Atkin, I'll let you go first. Your thoughts on this storyline. Okay,
well, as far as that, yeah, that's another plot convenience that I was talking. There's a lot of plot conveniences. Particularly when we get to the two-part finale, there's a lot of plot conveniences. So I agree with you on that one. Although this particular one is not one that bothered me as much, but I will point it out as it was a plot convenience. But as far as the 5 holograms, well, just to be clear, they're not all EMHs. Actually, one's a EEH, one's a ENH, one's a, like, depending on what they are. The hospitality one is a EHH. So you have to be specific about what. No, I'm kidding. But I'm with you on that scene. To me, yeah, I was okay with the holograms. They were kind of fun, whatever. They were a little sidebar, ha ha ha, whatever. They didn't bother me previously, but in this episode, yes. To me, it reminded me of, like, I am very, very anti holodeck after watching 3 of series that overdid the holodeck episodes, way overdid holodeck episodes, and they're not doing that in this series, which is good, but this was kind of a substitute for that. Like, this was a substitute for everything that I hate about those holodeck episodes. Anytime, like, any character wants to go in and get advice or try to help to solve a mystery or something by going to talk to a hologram in the holodeck, like Data getting advice from Joe Piscopo or whatever on how to be a comedian and all of that, that's what it reminded me of, like everything that I hate about holodeck episodes. So it's almost like, yeah, okay, fine, they're not having those holodeck episodes anymore, but they're just kind of sidestepping around the holodeck and still having a character like have ridiculous scenes with holograms, which is just as bad. So yeah, I'm on board with you. This is not a bright spot of the season. The whole thing with her talking to holograms.
All right, Don, your thoughts on the storyline?
Well, laddie. Now let me start. I'm actually horrible with accents. So look.
One more thing. The chief engineer the engineered hologram was Scottish.
Yeah.
The engineer hologram being Scottish.
You know what? Look, I'll be honest with you. I didn't have a problem with it. I'm like, look, once I kind of was able to get past the fact that it was absolutely ridiculous, I had fun with it. So yeah, after a while I stopped paying attention to what it was about, and it was just like, oh, okay, we got these different ones with the different accents. Let's just have fun with this little thing, because I'm not gonna really give a fuck about it once it's over. So yeah, I mean, look, and Mark, I'm surprised, likes the stereotypical crackhead from the 25th century. How could you? Like, yeah, who isn't still a drug addict in a utopia, right? Yeah, it was. I don't get the point of Raffi, but she's not as egregious to me as a Tilly 2.0, except for her whole calling Jean-Luc JL. I can't stand that.
I can't stand that either. It bothers me.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, she didn't get to do it this episode only because he wasn't he wasn't on the ship enough. He was too busy dealing with distraught distraught Tilly 2.0 there. Yeah, but Rios with the whole dark past that ties directly into Android Uprising, aka the Geth from Mass Effect. It was one of those things where, like, when Soji first comes on the ship and he's like, and you just see him, was like, okay, what the fuck is wrong with him? What the hell is all this about? And then he finds out, you find out it was like, yeah, my captain killed someone who looked just like her, and a dude too, and it was like, oh, interesting. And Starfleet made you wipe all of this away? Why did? And okay, is it me, or was it like Commodore O who specifically gave the order that they basically had to wipe that from the banks, or else that they would destroy the ship and everything?
Yeah. I mean, they pretty much said they do this nifty little cutting away where Raffi asks him who asked you to do it, and they cut to Girardi saying Commodore O, or no, maybe it was Soji saying Commodore O.
It was Soji.
It was Soji, yeah.
It's implied. That it was
yeah.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where, hello, see, this is one of the plot holes. If the Jadvaj wanted to get rid of those synthetics, they had the perfect opportunity. They had two emissaries there, and instead of, they could have captured them and said, take us back to your damn planet so they can go bomb the shit out of it. But yet they're like, oh no, kill them. And now you don't know what the damn planet is. Genius. Absolute genius.
That's true. Actually, I didn't think about that. Because the Jacques Vache's whole approach was Soji and Dodge. Even when Dodge, they tried to take her alive. The whole point was trying to gather information to find out where the planet's from. So I don't get why back then they just went straight to killing and not realizing, because they should have been aware they came from a planet back then. And plus, I don't know if I really buy this whole thing about the captain killed them because Commodore O said they'd destroy their ship if they didn't. Really? I mean, she would be able to do that, like, within Starfleet? Like, a Starfleet organization would destroy an entire starship because the captain refused to kill two people? Like, I don't see how she'd be able to get away with it. I don't care how high her position in Starfleet is.
Yeah, that seemed a little extreme to me.
Yeah.
That whole thing, you better kill these innocent people or I'm going to destroy your starship. No, I would put that on par with getting old school here in the original series in the Menagerie. Oh, you can't go to this planet or it's the death penalty. It was a little... this is even worse, actually. It's a little extreme. Like, I definitely did not. I mean, I felt like they could have still told an effective story without being that extreme. Like, that, I don't know. Yeah.
The fact that they're talking about, kill emissaries. I'm sorry, we're killing diplomats now? When the hell did this happen? I'm like, yeah, if it were me, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to need to speak to an admiral about this or something, because I'm sorry, Starfleet security lady, you just told me to kill two diplomats during first contact? Really? Kill them or we're going to destroy your ship. All right. I'll get right back to you on that one. Yeah, you give me a secure channel to Admiral whoever the fuck, so I can report this person for wanting me to commit murder for no good reason.
Yeah. Can I bring up another point about what was the name of this? Jana?
Yeah, Jana.
So she was Sutra's sister. Does that mean she was also golden?
I guess so.
Yeah, I think that's what's implied, yeah.
So, like, what species did they think she was? Like, they didn't know she was a synth. Because I had assumed all along they thought she was a human. Then we find out Sutra's golden, and her sister was also golden. Then what the hell did they think she was?
Right.
A gold alien, I guess? I don't know.
You got me. But I'm just like, yeah, that's... Yeah, the more and more I think about it, and again, seeing this is why people, I guess more longtime fans who don't want to overlook things, people who are ready to nitpick have been given so much ammo. And it's unfair. It's really unfair.
All right, let's go ahead and move over to the next storyline. Let's talk about, and this spans over 2 episodes. Let's talk about the whole Elnor versus Narissa on the Borg cube thing, including Hugh's death, 7 of 9 coming to save the day and connecting, becoming the Borg queen, and all this. I guess the main thing I want to focus on to begin with is Elnor, because as I said at the start, like I love this character. I think he's a great concept, and the way the actor plays him as well, and his reactions all work. What doesn't work is his storyline throughout the entire show. I don't think works because they introduce him. They wait until episode 4 to introduce him. In episode 5, he's a bodyguard who beams down to the Stardust City planet or whatever, and doesn't really do much. It's like, oh, you guys are lying. That's it. Very next episode, Picard's like, stay behind on the ship, and of course, so predictable, he doesn't stay behind. He beams over anyway, and then he separates from Picard. And he's separated from Picard for basically until the very end of the season. And so I feel like, and at the end of the season, they're trying to be like, oh, Elnor, we all love you. You're part of the crew. Like he barely did anything. Like I don't think they did much to earn this good character. I think separating him and making him be separate from the rest of the crew and on this Borg ship, first with Hugh and then with 7 of 9. I don't know. Like, and I hate that they killed off Hugh. I think it's kind of sucked. And then 7 of 9 comes to help him, and she's like saves the day at the last second. And her she connects to the Borg cube, which I thought, oh, this is amazing. It's going to be so awesome to see her have all these Borgs take on Narissa. But no, they all get blown out into space immediately. So I thought that was like they set up for such a great storyline that they're just like, nah, we're not going to do that. We can't be bothered. So I didn't like this whole thing. But anyway, Afkin, your thoughts on this one?
Well, I have been very adamantly against Elnor being separated from Picard because it makes episode 4 pointless, because like the whole thing was he was supposed to protect Picard, and then I'll protect you for 1 episode and then I'll go off into do my own thing. And this was my proposition of how this should have gone down. Okay, so he should have gone. Maybe he doesn't go with Picard into the portal, okay, because he needs to protect Hugh. Fine, because he might have had a hard time fitting in on the Riker planet. Maybe Elnor doesn't fit into the Riker storyline. Fine. But he gets on La Serena and goes with them to meet up with Picard. So he meets up with Picard sooner. And that whole storyline with 7 of 9 and Elnor should have been 7 of 9 and Hugh, who is still alive, and it would have made a lot more sense. And then you would see that connection that supposedly 7 of 9 and Hugh have, where to the point where 7 of 9 kills Narissa and goes, "This is for you." Well, we never saw you guys together on screen, so that means nothing to me. So, like, we could have at least have seen that. Oh yeah, off screen for the last 20 years, we made a connection because we're both ex-Borg, and now we're buddies now, and this is us working together and keep Hugh alive. Him in that instead of Elnor would have made so much more sense. Elnor in that whole storyline made no sense to me. He should have been with Picard. That's where they set him up to be in episode 4. They should have stuck with that to separate him from that storyline and try to cram him into this Borg storyline where he doesn't fit. Did not work for me. They should have kept Hugh alive and had Hugh be working with 7 of 9. In my opinion, I think that would have made a lot more sense, and have Elnor on with the Picard crew is what I think should have happened.
All right, Don, your thoughts?
Please, friends, choose to live. Nope. All right, so we got Elrond of Rivendell there, because apparently, Romulans are ninja elves now. Whose his job is to protect Picard on a throwaway mission, and he's supposed to die at Picard's side. Yeah, oh yeah, go. I'll stay here and protect this guy who I just met 2 seconds ago, while you go to somewhere where I'm not going to be able to find out because he's going to erase the logs. Genius, genius. Um, look, I got no problem with Elrond. I mean Elnor. Um, but I think that he was underutilized for what his mission was supposed to be. You know, if the mission is protect Picard on his suicide mission, fail. If the mission is, hey, go and just, go on an adventure and, get to use your ninja skills outside of, the little cityscape you'll be living in, okay, fine, cool. That's fine. I mean, if you said, hey, you know what? We got nothing to do with Elnor here. You mind taking him because he's just in here bored, not doing shit? Okay, cool, fine. Yeah. Elnor, come with me. We'll find something for you to do out in space. I would have had no problem with it, but him supposedly being Picard's watcher and his bodyguard and basically not doing any of that for the latter half of the season was like, oh wow. Yeah. Wow, this is amazing. Right? Right, yeah, sure. Again, shout out to Hugh. He deserved better. That's all I got to say.
The only thing I would sort of push back on Don is that Elnor is clearly Legolas, not Elrond. I mean, their names are more similar, Elnor, Elrond, but Elrond's sort of the older, wiser, more stoic, where Legolas is sort of the younger, athletic type that I think they were going for with Elnor. I think maybe they called him Elrond. His name was closer to Elrond rather than Legolas. It could have been like Armalus or something. I don't know. It's because they didn't want to be too obvious with it.
Well, maybe he was young Elrond.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah,
we don't know what Elrond was like in his youth.
Yeah, well, that's right. We don't know what he's like.
He's Elrond.
Legolas.
Yeah, he's Elrond.
I think he's Legolas.
No, I agree with you, Mark.
He's Elrond from The Hobbit.
I don't know.
Maybe he's Elrond in the new upcoming Lord of the Rings prequel that's coming on Netflix next year.
Oh God. Anyway, actually, I'm looking forward to that, but we'll see how it goes. But anyway, okay. So, what do we think about? Because I touched shortly about the whole thing with 7 of 9 becoming the Borg Queen. We are Borg. Now, here's the question I got to ask because I've heard different opinions on this. Because the impression that I got is when she made a Borg collective and became the queen, it wasn't just the Borg, it was also the XBs. I got the impression that she was sort of in sync with the XBs when they stormed Narissa, which is actually a really cool scene. I love how they basically come out of, I didn't even notice them the first time I saw that scene until she turned around and talked to her lieutenant who was already dead, and I thought that was an amazing scene. But yeah, the question is, because I got the impression that she was in control of the XBs, but I've heard other people say that she wasn't. And if she wasn't, to me, that does make the whole thing about her becoming the queen pointless, because if all the Borg she's controlling just go get blown out into space. What was your guys'
Oh, I never questioned for a second that she wasn't in control of the XBs.
Yeah.
I never would have crossed my mind that she wasn't in control of the XBs. Of course she was.
Yeah.
But I never, until just now, I didn't even think that was a debate.
I've heard several people say that they thought she wasn't control the XBs.
Oh, I think it's pretty obvious she was. But
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, the way that they were all in sync, obviously she formed a new collective there. But okay, I thought the Borg could breathe in space. I mean, I remember that being a thing. So
really?
Dude, you don't remember
First Contact when they were on the side of the ship?
Exactly.
Yeah, but they're if they're floating in space, they can't really do much.
I mean, well, no, there's one thing if you can't do much, but also remember, the Borg had the most powerful tractor beams, and I'm pretty sure if you're jacked into the entire cube, oh, okay, hey, lock on to all the Borg signatures. close the damn the airlock and beam them back in. I'm just saying. I mean, if you're the queen, you're jacked into the damn ship like you're Neo in the Matrix. I would imagine you would have that power.
It doesn't bother me too much that the Borg can't breathe in space. It would actually bother me more that they were able to before. To be honest.
I don't know. I mean, listen, 7 of 9 has been a little bit of a mixed bag for me for this particular series, because she's so different. And I understand it's been like 20 something years, but she doesn't. I mean, other than the fact that it's Jerry Ryan, she just doesn't have the 7 of 9 feel to me. So even to see her jacked in as a drone or the queen this time, it was kind of like, all right, well.
Yeah, she does kind of feel like a different character, but I can somewhat buy that because time passes and people with age become somewhat different. Although, I don't know. Somewhat, I say, because she's really different.
Well, I actually completely buy that she would be totally different. It's been in Star Trek time, 30 years since we've seen 7 of 9? Because
no, 18, I think.
Well, that was Nemesis. Was 18.
Yeah, and Voyager ended shortly before Nemesis.
Okay.
Voyager was only 2 years behind Nemesis.
Okay, so it's 20 years.
20 years, yeah.
But whatever it is, like, I would be really pissed if she was exactly the same. So I completely buy that she's different. What I have more of an issue with is I don't feel that this new 7 of 9 was very fleshed out. Like I can buy that she's a different person now after 20 years, but I don't feel that this new version of her was very well developed in the time that we know.
Listen, I get I get all of what you're saying, Acton. The thing that kind of just didn't get me, I think it's maybe because her speech patterns have changed so drastically.
Yeah.
If she sounded a little more like 7, like not completely, obviously, you don't want her sounding as robotic as she did back then, but if she would have sounded a little more like 7 to 9 that we're used to me, I would have bought that. Because think about it. Think about people that you have known for years, or even people that you may have encountered when you were younger. You don't see them for a while, and they get older. They don't sound completely, different with the way that they speak.
But she talked like that because she was with the Borg, and now she's been surrounded by humans for 20 years. So I actually would have been pissed if she still talked like that, because that would have made no sense to me.
I mean,
just think about if you Mark, when you moved to New Zealand, you picked up a little bit of a New Zealand accent, and you were only there for 7 years. People who moved to another country for 20 years pick up on that accent.
I was there for 15 years.
Oh, yeah. If you're around for people for 20 years that talk a certain way, and plus, as Cardinal Doomsday picks up, she's drinking some whiskey now, so that probably helped loosen her up a little bit. Take some whiskey shots, but
I still sounded like me though, even though I sounded slightly different. And that's what Don's saying. She doesn't have to sound exactly.
That wasn't her. But the difference is that wasn't her natural. She wasn't born talking like that. She talked like that because she was assimilated with the Borg. So as she gets further and further away from that assimilation, she goes back to the natural way humans talk, the way that she talked up until age whatever it was that she was assimilated. Like normal human talk. So that makes total sense that she would just go back to how she's supposed to talk.
Well, my bigger point is with 7 of 9. I actually overall didn't really mind her portrayal in this show, but I think she was completely unnecessary. I think, in fact, the whole Borg storyline entirely, I think, was unnecessary. I think it was a complication that doesn't really add anything to the overall story. And I think the part of the problem with this show is that it loses focus and it goes all over the place. And maybe should have focused more on this android storyline so they wouldn't have to rush through it in the last episode. All right. Well, anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the next storyline. Let's talk about. So let's get into the whole. I want to get into the whole mythology. Like we see the flashback with the Romulans tearing their skin across because they see the whole thing about 8 suns being thrown together, and they have they apparently were led to believe that the Zhat Vash formed like 300 years ago or something like that because they had this vision they thought was the most important thing in the world to wipe out, make sure no synthetic life was encountered, and also the whole thing about Picard and Rios and the whole crew sort of figuring this all out and putting this all together. I don't know. To me, it seems like they were withholding these mysteries throughout the entire season as something like, "Ooh, what's going on here?" And boom, one exposition scene at the end, they like lay it all out. I don't know. Something to that made it feel a bit anticlimactic to me. Just a little bit. And the whole thing about, the Zhat Vash being at this presence that was trying to destroy all synthetic life form, like, I don't know, it doesn't directly contradict anything in Next Gen or previous seasons, but I don't think it particularly goes along with it. Like, we got no hint. You could always say, oh, they were just in the background biding their time, which, why were they biding their time if now all of a sudden they actively, threaten to destroy an entire fucking Starfleet ship just to kill 2 androids? I don't know. Something. And plus, it does seem very fantasy-like, too, that, they're going to call this massive evil AI that's just waiting to come and kill everyone. I don't know. Like, I didn't completely hate this, but I wasn't a huge fan of it either. Apkin, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it was perfect, but I probably, am not as, sounds like not quite as bothered by it as you were. I mean, I definitely think they could have done this better. And one thing that always bothers me, not just in this, but I've seen this in so many different shows and movies, and it bugs the shit out of me how they always have to have this exuberant number of years. Oh, it's 300,000 years ago. Like, put this in perspective. 2,000 years ago was the time when supposedly, if you're a believer in Jesus Christ, that's when he walked around on the earth 2,000 years ago. Think about how long ago that feels. And think about how long ago it feels for like when the Roman Empire existed, or BC, when the ancient Egyptians, what was that, like 4,000 years ago? So when you put that in perspective, 300,000 years ago, that is just insane.
I do want to mention very briefly this is something I complain about all the time in every incarnation of Star Trek. Star Trek, particularly the original series, they always throw out these outrageous numbers that are completely like Wei Yun said the Dominion was founded 50,000 years ago. I'm like, what?
Right, put that in perspective. Like, think about like ancient Egyptians was like 5,000, 6,000 years ago. Like, so when you get into hundreds of thousands, yeah, that's insane. And I feel like it's not just Star Trek. I feel like I've seen that on a lot of different things that they do this, but yeah, it is definitely an issue with Star Trek, and I just I have a hard time buying that this Zhat Vash has existed for that long and that the AIs were there that long ago. And also, I still, at the end of my complaint throughout the season was, why the Zhat Vash why don't just call it the Tal Shiar? Because I didn't like how they were like, ooh, we have this even secreter organization. And then all throughout the season, they kept referring to it as the Tal Shiar instead of the Zhat Vash. So it was like, well, why didn't you just call it the Tal Shiar? But toward the end, okay, once they get into that explanation, it was like, okay, I see that this is kind of like a particular sect of the Tal Shiar, or I guess they're not the Tal Shiar, but that believes in against everything against androids or whatever. So I was a little more comfortable with that, but I think overall, I think I would have been okay if it was just the Tal Shiar, and that the Tal Shiar in general just didn't believe or were anti-androids, or maybe there was a small section of the Tal Shiar that had this little ritual. I don't know. I'm just always bothered by the whole Zhat Vash thing.
But how come, like, in the Next Generation, every time the Romulans encountered the Enterprise, they should have been trying to kill Data constantly if this was the case?
Well, Well, that's the explanation for why Commodore O into Starfleet, because not everybody's Yad Bosch. Like, Yad Bosch is only a specific small.
But how they get 250 ships then?
Yeah, 218. But yeah.
218, yeah. Sorry.
Because they convinced the rest of the Romulan government? I don't know.
So the show could happen.
Yeah.
I mean, well, what there isn't a centralized Romulan government. There is it though.
There is a centralized Romulan government.
They call it the Romulan Free State now, so it's different than the
planet anymore. But yeah,
it's not the Romulan Empire that's gone, but now they have the Romulan Free State, which they never really get into the details of the specifics. I'm sure if you read a fucking comic book or a novel, they will tell you. And this is another thing. I'm going to sidebar. This pissed me off. All this sort of bad robot. I don't know if this is considered. No, it's considered hideout. But the stuff Abrams and Alex Kurtzman always do. They always do this shit where you have to read a fucking comic book or a novel, which is bullshit. There's so much of this, and that's why part of the reason why I don't like Raffi, because all of her backstories are explained in a stupid comic book. Where I think this is bullshit. It pisses me off. Anyway,
I 100% agree on that. Like, if you can't tell your story within the show itself, then it's not a very well told story. Like, if you have to go read the comic book or a novel or whatever, then it's not a very well told story. That's my opinion.
Next, please.
All right, cool. So let's get into the next storyline, which is where the crew arrive in Synth Town, and they meet Sutra, and they meet what's his face soon? What's his name? I can't remember his first name.
Ultron soon or something.
Ultron.
Alton Inigo soon.
Alton soon. Okay.
Alton Inigo soon.
Inigo soon. Okay.
Yeah, which everyone thought was going to be lore because AI soon.
It would have made more sense if he were lore, honestly.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that would have bothered me a lot. Like throughout the finale, I was like, "Please don't be lore." But I don't know.
It made more sense than Dr. Noonan and Soong having a son. That he never.
I think either sucks. I think the whole thing. Don't even have him there in the first place. It's just an excuse to bring Brent Spiner back, and he can be his own age and doesn't have to put on all this makeup where he looks fucking weird. Like there was just an excuse to have him around. And it came out of nowhere. It's like, oh my god. But anyway, this whole storyline, basically the whole episode 9 where they're on the planet and eventually Picard gets put under house arrest and Sutra turns evil and decides to have the AI, and she's willing to kill one of her things. We'll get into the reaction, the finale later, but mostly the episode 9 stuff where they first meet all the synths and they have their little. What does it look like? A hippie commune or like a beach party or something? I don't know. Why sensor look like this?
I heard on someone else brought this up on something I was listening to about this is a common thing on Star Trek. Anytime you go to like some peaceful society, wherever utopia, they're all wearing these like togas. Very, not necessarily togas, but like these very flowy, like old, like BC type clothing. Like, why is that? Like, if you're going to be peaceful, you have to dress. You have to dress in togas. I don't know.
Like, I like these androids at first, and I like how they were all peaceful. But then when they had it was such a cliche storyline, and the thing with Sutra. And I'm sorry, I do not buy that she gave a Vulcan mind meld to a human. I saw this meme on Facebook trying to excuse this, being like, oh, people were saying it violates canon. They show a picture of Spock mind melding with Nomad from the Changeling from the original series. It's like, Star Trek canon. See, no, there's a fucking Vulcan involved in that situation. There's no Vulcan involved here, and a Vulcan and an android initiated a Vulcan mind meld with a human is totally different than a Vulcan mind melding with a machine. Get the fuck out of here with that bullshit.
Martin, you know how I feel about that. That, like, I was like, come on! I was literally yelling at my screen. It's been very well established. Nobody but Vulcans can do that. And also, it was just kind of like that they just threw it in there. Like, oh, well, she studied Vulcan history. And like, come on. And like what I said in my review is like, if for the plot required like a batleth battle. Now, oh, well, she studied Klingon history. She knows how to use a batleth.
Well, that I would buy more than this because that's a skill you can learn. You can't learn to be telepathic.
Right. But just the point is like it was just such a plot convenience. Like the plot needed somebody to be able to do a Vulcan mind meld there. So it's like, oh, she knows how to do the Vulcan mind. No, she doesn't. No, she doesn't.
Like when Data learned the Vulcan nerve pinch, like sure. You can learn the Vulcan nerve pinch, but because you don't have to be telepathic.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this whole storyline, Don, what are your thoughts on it?
I got more to say on this, but we'll let Don.
Okay, yeah.
All right, so we got Gold Soji, who somehow they actually made her look a little older. Is it me or did you know?
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean she because Soji looked like she was still like a teenager, and the other one looked like she might have been like in her early 20s. You know, just that little bit there was like one's 19, the other one's 23. You know, maybe it was because of the way that they had her dressed or something like that. But either way, Vulcan mind melds from an android. I'm still trying to figure out the whole. You're an android, but you have an organic body. I still don't 100% understand that. Maybe you guys can break that down for me how that's supposed to work. But yeah, so okay, so you have Bruce Maddox and AI Sung, and they created this whole colony, and then they decided to send off Soji and Daj to find out what were they supposed to be finding out, and why those two? I'm just it's starting to hurt my head now. Like the score for me is starting to go down now that I think about all of this stuff, because there's a lot of this stuff that really is like, why would you need all of these extra steps to get this information? And then also like with why did Commodore, I mean, like, just backtracking, why did Commodore O need to be half Vulcan, half Romulan? I mean, because technically,
no, I can answer you right now, because they explain why she can do a mind meld. Because Romulans can't do mind melds, but apparently androids. Because I don't actually know why they give a fuck about that. But
I'm just because technically, Romulans are Vulcans just from a different planet.
Well, I think there's like evolution. They splintered off. There's an evolutionary difference. Like they're considered an offshoot of Vulcans. They're not considered the same race.
Okay, I mean, because like when they were explaining the whole thing later on, what that Eric talks about, he talks about the whole synth destroyer worlds thing being a legend from before his ancestors arrived on Vulcan.
Yeah, see, that is inconsistent with history, because history says that the Romulans left Vulcan. Right. So I wonder if that's like the sort of Romulans' perspective of, actually, we went to Vulcan or whatever. That's their way of sort of being arrogant and saying that.
No, but he said before their ancestors arrived, not even before, like, not before the Vulcans, not before the Romulans left, Romulus to go to Vulcan.
I don't know.
I don't know. Listen, man, it seemed like they wanted to make things overly complicated. They added way too many steps, for some of this stuff, where they could have cut a lot of the filler out and would have made a much tighter and much more well-rounded story. But yeah, I'm sorry. It started giving me a fucking headache about some of this stuff.
Well, Mark, I will agree with you on something you said earlier, that it felt rushed. that the pacing was off. I don't know why we necessarily were tied to 10 episodes. Like, I don't know why they could. Discovery was 14 and 15 episodes. Like, why take a little bit more time to develop this android storyline? Because
called CGI.
The last 2 episodes just the whole thing felt really rushed to me, especially the episode 9, which was the setup for the final part. But yeah, Sutra, like, I have a problem with her character being so evil. Like, so was she always that evil the whole time? The rest of the colony is set up to be like this really peaceful and loving. And when what's her face sees Picard, that other android sees Picard, she's like, "Oh, you're like Commander Data. Oh, Commander Data remembers you." Like that, I can buy. Like, I think that would be cool if they all like have that kind of influence from Data. So if they have all that influence from Data, how did she become so evil? And was she always evil, or she just now turned evil? And she was like super evil, to the point where she's killing one of her own kind. So I didn't buy that. Like, I think if you want that, then take more time to develop that, if that's where you're going. Can I get into Dr. Soong now? Can I get into? I was telling Mark off the air before we started that in preparation for this, I rewatched the Next Generation episode Brothers, so season 4, episode 3, which has Noonie and Soong in it, because I was very curious about what he said. I was almost thinking he might have specifically said he never had children, but rewatching that episode, he doesn't specifically say he never had children, but Data asks him, like, why did you create me? And so he gets into this long philosophical discussion and has Data asking him questions, which all comes back to, why do people procreate? I created you because I want to procreate, which really implies that he didn't have any of his own children, and he didn't have any of his own children. Like, they just, if this Soong existed, then where was he when Bruce Maddox was in Measure of a Man? What was he doing as far as his research of cybernetics? Why did he never go visit Data? Why did Data never mention him? Because he didn't exist until just now, and that drives me crazy. Like, this is like the worst retcon that I've seen in a long time. Like, they just invented him and crammed him in the storyline, and he never existed until then. Dr. Soong never had a son. That's why I almost said, like, it would have made more sense. I wouldn't, to be clear, Mark, I don't think I would have liked it if it were lore either, but at least it would have made more sense because we know.
Well,
lore.
Yes, I'll give you that. Yeah.
And we never actually saw him die, so I could buy that he would still be alive. So I don't know.
But I knew it wouldn't really make sense to be lore after episode 9, because they were talking about Soong wanting to put himself in the golem body, so it doesn't.
Yeah,
lore wouldn't want to do that.
That wouldn't have made a lot of sense.
Yeah,
but it would have made more sense that Lore was still alive than that Dr. Soong had a son that he doesn't have. Like, that character does not exist. That is BS.
It is complete BS. I think I would put this retcon right up there with saying Bashir was genetically enhanced all the time. Maybe even worse than that. Maybe that's how bad it is.
I don't know. I want to get into episode 10 stuff or not, but I had a real problem with him in episode 10 too. But
all right, let's go ahead and move on to the next storyline I have, which is, this is getting to one aspect of episode 10. It's pretty much, yeah. So Narek teams up with the gang to destroy the beacon, and so they go there to destroy the beacon, and then soon finds out that fucking Sutra killed another android, so he turns on him and knocks her out. So just getting up to that point, not beyond that. So basically the first part of episode 10. I wasn't a fan of Narek joining up. It seemed he was like, we're on the same side now. We got to team up. Like, are they really on the same side? Like, I don't know. It seemed to happen. Like, I like Elnor's reaction. I think that made more sense to me. And I thought that was actually a cool scene where he like put the sword on him and he's immediately, I choose to live. Like I thought that was a nice callback to Elnor's catchphrase. But I don't really buy them working together. And then, of course, the whole thing, Narek disappears after this scene. Like, we have no idea what the hell happened to him. Like, when I first watched the episode, I was like, did I miss something that I missed later on? They explain what. But no, Like they go to he yells at Soji to stop it, and of course, like I don't know. I'm gonna sort of disagree with something you said in your review, Apkin, because you said you were a fan of, and they did this before in the Stardust City episode where they're plotting out their scheme of what they're gonna plot, and then they intercut between them pulling it off and actually doing it. I hated that. I think they did that once already, and I didn't like that much again. And doing it again, I was like, okay, it seems like they're trying too hard to be all cutesy and clever. Where I'm more like, just get to the fucking point. And why did they let Rios bring in a soccer ball? Like, doesn't that look really suspicious? Who just goes around carrying a soccer ball everywhere they go? I mean, I don't know. I have issues with this. Anyway, how can your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm actually doing a Discovery rewatch too, and they actually do that in Discovery. I didn't know,
okay.
But they do that same thing. Yeah, I don't know, the cutting back and forth thing. That was not my issue with it, and I didn't have an issue with Narek going to them and convincing them that they're on the same side, because they are. They do have a common cause. Like, I don't know what you mean they don't have a common cause.
I don't know about that. Like, he wants to wipe out all the androids. They've been so at odds. They want to both stop the androids from bringing in the evil AI, sure, but he wants to wipe them all out.
Well, that's their common goal, though. They're like, Rios and Raffi and them are not helping him to wipe out all of the androids. They're helping him to stop the beacon, which they do have a common cause in. So that aspect of it, I didn't have a problem with. I did think it was a little choppy how he told Narissa that he was going off to destroy the flowers, and then by the time he gets to the La Serena, he's not destroying the flowers, he's destroying the beacon. So at some point on his way to La Serena, he figured out about the beacon.
Yeah, he did mention. He did mention that he went to destroy the flowers, but he saw the beacon, and that's why he went back to the La Serena. But it was one line of dialogue, so I could understand why anyone could miss it, because
it was off screen still.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I think it would have made more sense if he had found out about the beacon while he was at the compound and already knew about it. But anyway, that's a minor point. I didn't have a huge issue with that, but I do have an issue with this character overall for the whole season. I never really liked this. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah. I can now, yeah.
Yeah, it muted itself for some reason.
Yeah.
So I was just saying, like, I never really understood. I never really liked this character as a whole. Like, I think this character. I would say this about his sister too, but this character was a big, epic fail of the season. You guys, Don talked about Girardi. You talked about Raffi. To me, Narek and his sister are the worst characters on the show. And
no, I'll grant you that.
and I like that. I didn't really get what was his motivation. Like, did he really love Soji? Did he not? Whose side was he really on? He was a very poorly fleshed out character. I still don't get why Romulans have British accents. I still.
Now that part doesn't bother me, though.
I don't know. It's just part of the whole thing. And just something about this character I just never really liked. And then to top it all off, he gets no ending. I watched the episode twice, Mark. And after the second time, I was like, wait, what? Like, after the first time, I was like, wait, what happened to Narek? Let me pay attention. Let me see if I can figure it out. And then I just forgot about it because I don't care about him. And then I watched it the second time and I was like, oh, wait, I didn't catch it. What happened to him again? So then I had to go back a third time and see that his final scene was when the androids are holding him down and he's yelling at Soji, don't do this. Which you and I both agreed, Mark, that probably just made her want to do it more. But he just kind of disappears off of the show, like just drops off the face of the show. Not even a line of dialogue. Oh, well, Narek is being held captive in the android, or not something, just something. He just like drops off of the face of the show. I don't have a particular problem with him joining up with the crew there, but I just have I have a problem with the character overall and how he just drops off.
Well, what about I think you wanted to rant about Soon just disabling Sutra.
Can I rant about that?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so in episode 9, he's all like, "Oh yeah, genocide! Yay! Let's just wipe out all of organic life in the entire galaxy. I'm all on board. Woohoo! Genocide!" And then he finds out, oh, one android killed one android. Okay, well, I don't like genocide anymore. That just puts it. That's crossing the line. You killing one android, killing the entire galaxy of organic life. I'm all on board with that. But you kill one android. Oh, that's too much for me. I just didn't buy that at all. I think I would buy it more if he was never in favor of genocide in the first place. That would make more sense to me. And then, yeah, and this also speaks to Soji being, or Sutra being so rushed as a character. Did not buy this character at all. And then all he does is just turn her off and she falls over. That's what. Again, I think take a little more time. Maybe a few more episodes could have helped. I'm not sure, but take a little more time. It was rushed. Rushed.
I heard someone else say, I can't remember who it was, but that as soon as presented as someone who loves androids, they perceives that they're the superior life form. He's wanting to wipe out all organic life forms for them. Yet he created an off button for them that he could instantly shut them off.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, Don.
Well, listen, Acton, you got to think about it, right? It is okay for you to commit mass genocide. It is not okay for you to kill family. And Sutra killed her sister. Bad girl. Very, very bad. All right. So that was the turning point. I was like, oh man, if she's willing to kill her sister, what about all these other androids? I must stop her. I must stop her evil plan now. Yeah, look, man, this is just one of those things. There's another plot convenience. They had to show that, that Alton Inigo Soon wasn't one of the bad guys. He was just misled by one of his progeny. Look, I again, here is one of the things that people, longtime fans who have big issues with supposed New Trek are having issues with, is the fact that things that shouldn't have plot holes that you can drive a fleet of starships through are sitting right there. It's like, how did no one pick this up? How is no one picking up any of these plot threads and saying, hey, wait. Yeah, now how is that supposed to work where, he creates the androids, considers them to be higher beings than himself? It's like, oh, fail safe, click. I'm just not understanding that. And why exactly is Sutra, a bad robot? Like, what made her? I mean, because remember, she was created by Bruce Maddox. Bruce was there for all that time before he decided to go on whatever bender he, went on and got captured and in debt to the Romulans and all this other stuff. And then AI Sung is still there, so he didn't leave and he's organic. So why exactly now is she all, gung-ho about must kill all organic life forms? I'm just not understanding this. I don't know.
Yeah, I just thought of something that I think could have fixed a lot of issues with the season, is that they shouldn't have killed off Bruce Maddox and not even actually found them earlier in the season. They withheld him to have him be on this planet and he take the role of Soon. So just keep the fucking Soon out of it entirely. So that would fix that problem. And also fix the problem to how Dorati problem, how she turned that way. So because we skip over the whole thing with her killing Bruce Maddox and have him be the one on the planet. This would make the season so much better, in my opinion.
I agree with you. Yeah, I think that would have made more sense.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next storyline I want to talk about, which is we can go really. This is a really short one. Go really quickly over this. Narissa versus 7 of 9 on the Borg ship. So Narissa, who I refer to as Cersei Romulan in my review. Because what the fuck is up with the whole hitting on the brother thing? And they never actually, like, they just implied it the whole time. It's like, why are you guys constantly flirting with each other? And like, she's like threatening to kill him, being a total asshole to him throughout the whole season. But all of a sudden, this episode, she gives him a hug when she sees him. I'm like, okay. I always looked like even he was surprised by this. I'm like, what? And so, why is she alive? Like this is something we complained about because the other scene she got swarmed by XBs, and I watched the scene again, and you clearly see a transporter beam beaming her away. So why didn't she beam onto one of the Romulan ships? Like I said in my review, I actually would have been okay with her character if she was the one who was commanding the fleet instead of O, because as to me, it made much more sense if O stayed on Earth and tried to sabotage Starfleet so it didn't send a huge fucking fleet to stop them. And so this whole thing would have made way more sense to me. But instead, they have to have her have this stupid fight scene with 7 of 9, which I did not like at all. I think, and her going, "This is for you." I hated that. It felt really cheesy. And like I will agree with you, Avkin, that she was by far the worst character in the whole show. She was the mustache twirly, flirting with her brother for no goddamn reason, and just like straight up evil until she gets killed off in a cheesy fight scene. Like, I think this is the biggest for me. But anyway, Avkin, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, well, I mean, if she was beamed away, who was beaming her? Does she like have her own little personal emergency transporter switch that she was just like able to hit something and beam herself somewhere? Or I don't know. It didn't make any sense that if she were still alive that she would be on the Borg cube. It actually threw me off at first when Narek saw her there. I was like, wait, what? What? Because I had assumed she must have beamed off into a Romulan ship. I mean, that was the only thing that made any sense. So for her to still be alive and still be on the Borg cube makes no sense. And then for them to just kill her off in the next scene just so they could have that stupid fight scene with her in 7 9, you may as well just have the XBs just kill her. Like, just have the XBs kill her if that's all you're going to do, is bring her back. She gets one reunion scene with Narek, and then the next scene after that she gets killed anyways. Just a complete and total waste. But actually, as I said in my review, if this were Star Wars, she would still be alive, because falling into deep chasms in Star Wars means that you're still alive. But Star Trek, hopefully, if they try to bring her back, I'm just going to be really annoyed, because this was a failure of a character, and let's just move on to the next thing and get beyond this, because yeah, it was a failure, this character.
All right, Don, your thoughts on this?
That's my thoughts.
Right, I think you summed it up. All right, so let's get to the next storyline, which is Picard. Flies La Serena up to the Romulan fleet to try to slow them down, and then he tries to talk Soji down. I think I like this. I particularly like the part with Picard talking Soji down. I think this is classic Picard speeches. Now, I've heard an opinion from some people who didn't like this. We thought it didn't hold up to the classic Picard speeches. Thought it was a bit too drastic that he was able to change Soji's mind. I didn't, because Soji seemed like she was kind of on the fence about this whole wiping out all organic. She just feels like she's cornered and she has no other choice. So I totally buy Picard and illustrating, and I love his line to Jurati about just how you teach all children by example. So, and I love when he says, "I'm going to give you something that's going to show we care about you," and she's like, "What's that?" He's like, "My life," and it hangs up on her. I thought that was awesome. I think maybe it's undercut by the fact that he didn't actually give his life, but I guess we'll get into that shortly. But I really like this stuff. And I don't know, like I even though it's stupid for Riker to be in charge of this entire huge ass fleet, which all has identical ships, I still got me right here in that Riker. I was like, yes, Riker! Like, I was kind of fanboying out on that one. I see Don really disagrees with me. But anyway, so Don, let's get at you first. What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so we got the Picard maneuver 2.0 because, hey, you can't have one decoy ship have 200 because space magic. You got the Ocarina of Time there, and somehow that's able to call up 200 holograms that can actually move independently of each other and make it look like there's 200.
And they have warp signatures.
Yes.
I thought they all didn't move independently of each other, though. I thought when Picard's ship got hit, they all went back.
Yeah. Yeah, when Picard's ship got hit, they all disappeared. And it was like,
they all had the same motion as Picard's ship, like going, it was like going back.
Right, but before that,
they were doing different motions before that. They were going.
Oh, they were.
Yeah. But then somebody smacked Tinkerbell around, and there goes space magic. All right. But then look, I loved Riker showing up, but god damn it, you guys, seriously, who in the art department said, "Oh yeah, just copy and paste. No one will ever know that these are not the same exact damn starship"?
I can tell you exactly who, Don. It was the people in charge of budget. It's going to be so much cheaper if we just copy and paste the ship a whole bunch of times.
You know what? It would have been better if they would have taken a scene from an older Star Trek, from one of the movies, or no, you know what? I don't think a fleet has ever shown up in any of the movies. No, take a scene from DS9, okay, and try to clone one of them or something like that. That would have worked better than to have all these ships show up and all of them look exactly the damn same. Because
they don't just look the same. Like there's a line of dialogue that Riker said they are all the same model of ship, which I just found really hard to believe.
Yeah. But anyway, Akton, your thoughts on this one?
So first, getting back to what you first started talking about with the Soji Picard stuff, I liked it too. I did like. I mean, it was predictable. There was no way that Soji was going to go through with it, and the AI aliens were going to come and wipe out all organic life. I mean, obviously Picard was going to talk her out of it, but to me, it was a classic Picard speech, and I enjoyed it. Like I did like it too, and all in all, I was fanboying out on the Riker thing too, even though so I just kind of brushed aside all of the clear problem with that. The way that he was like, oh, I have the biggest, baddest, fastest, strongest starship in the world, and I have 100 of them, and it was like that was over the top for me, and because they did throw in that little line back in episode 7 where Riker said that he was on non-active duty or something like that allows for him to be called. I almost thought at that time that probably means he's going to be back in Starfleet at some point, because that kind of opened the door for that, but I didn't buy that he would have time from the time Picard sent out the signal to go and meet up with the starship and then become the captain of that starship. What happened to the regular captain of that?
And command the entire fleet. Yeah, that's what I don't buy.
There's no way he would be commanding the entire fleet. What about captains who have been there for a while? Where's the Enterprise too? Where is the Enterprise? Is there not an Enterprise F floating around and F the exact same ship as that? I don't know. I didn't buy any of that, but again, I kind of forgave all of it because it was cool to see Riker again, as I was fanboying out on it too. So I just sort of forgave it. But yeah,
See, I was saying in my review that I was actually expecting to see Admiral Clancy commanding the fleet and just show up and go like, Commodore O, the sheer fucking hubris. but anyway, one thing I have to say about this thing, and to be fair, like they didn't actually do a huge fight scene because they did the Romulan ships shooting at the La Serena holograms, and they did the Romulan ships shooting at all the flowers, which I still think Space Flowers is a bit silly, but they didn't actually have a huge fight between the Starfleet ships and the Romulans. So I will grant that. But it seems like this is the problem I have with modern Trek is they always have to, and this is very similar to Discovery, particularly season 2, is that they have to have something lead up to a big, huge life or death battle, that it can't just be more character based the way that Star Trek has always been, that it has to crescendo in this, the whole universe at risk, let's have these huge fleets of 200 and whatever 15 ships. Like, that's over the top. Like, you could have had 70 ships and it still would have got the same point across. It seems like this modern Trek mentality is still like, bigger is better, let's have the huge battle. And this is something that's just speculation, but because this reminds me so much of Discovery and other modern Trek, I think it's a trait that the higher ups like Alex Kurtzman have. Like, I think Michael Chabon, and from what I've heard, everything about him, he's more responsible for the character beats that I love so much in the show. I think the over the top plots is more of a high up Kurtzman type thing. That's just my speculation, but I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
I got nothing.
Yeah, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, that might be true. It seems like they shouldn't have to do that every season. Like Picard season 2, maybe we can skip that. So I don't know.
We hope. I hope so.
And Discovery season 3, maybe we can skip that, but I don't know. But there's one thing else I forgot to mention. If we go back, because Dawn touched on this before, can we talk about the magic plot convenience machine?
Oh yes.
Magic little machine that whenever the plot needs something fixing, they would just, this machine does that. Like, are they gonna? Please don't tell me they're gonna carry this on in the season 2. Like, we're trapped in something. It's like Deus Ex Machina machine almost. Like, this little machine will save us. Like, and with no explanation as to what in the hell it is. Like,
just think happy thoughts and
from androids. The thing that it's imagination power that came from androids. It is the plot convenience machine. Like, we need something to fix in the plot. We'll just use this machine and it'll magically fix things. Like, I really hope we don't see that again in season 2. But I have a feeling like I think they still have it with them. So I'm worried about that becoming like an ongoing thing.
All right, let's go ahead and move over to our last storyline I want to discuss, and that's Picard's death and resurrection and the visit from Data and sort of the conclusion of the whole episode. Well, first, the visit from Data I thought was maybe, like I've hinted at this before, I think it was probably the best scene in the entire show. Like, it was so heartfelt, so earned, so true to the characters. And I've heard a lot of people say that it was giving Data the death he deserved, that he didn't get a nemesis, which I would phrase that differently, because I think the death in Nemesis, I didn't have an issue with that. I thought that went all well, but they didn't give it enough attention. Like, they just sped through it, like rushed through it, and they just had one quick funeral scene. This was sort of focusing more on the impact of his death and what
Mark,
it had.
If I interrupt for a second, Arium got more of a funeral than Data.
Yes, that is true. But the actual circumstance of it, of him beaming over and saving Picard's life, I think worked. They just didn't pay enough impact of what his death had, and that's something I think the show overall, not just this one scene, really didn't. I think this is a great way to tie everything together. I thought it was a good bookends for the show because it started with Picard being haunted by Data's death, and the line where Data asks Picard, "Well, do you regret sacrificing yourself for Soji?" He's like, "Not for a minute." It's like, "Why do you think I would regret sacrificing?" Like that was amazing. I think this is probably the show like at its best, and it was a good way to tie the whole show together. But getting more into the Picard resurrection thing, like I think this really seriously undercut the ending. And plus, like I don't know, for me personally, because Data was talking about the importance of being mortal and not living forever. Yet Picard has lived a full life, 94 years old, and granted, the disease is cutting his life a little short, but he still experienced he lived a full life and experienced everything he lived. And Data's like, yeah, we all need to die eventually. Even though Data's life was cut incredibly short, he was only alive for 25 years or something. But no, let's give Picard, a 94-year-old man, a body to live again. To me, that undercuts the message of mortality, and the fact that he just survives undercuts his sacrifice to Soji, in my opinion. But of course, the show's called Picard, so we can't have a season 2 without Picard. And I think that undercut a lot of the messages they were trying to say in the show. But I still love that Data scene. But anyway, Atkin, your thoughts on this one?
The Data scene made it for me. Couple things. It ties the whole show together. It ties Picard is our lead character, his story arc, and that is the most important story arc of all of the characters to do right. If you're going to do one right, it better be Picard. And the fact that he, in the beginning, he was motivated by Data. He's haunted by Data's death. He's dreaming about Data. He is motivated by, and also haunted by the mistakes he made with Starfleet and abandoning the Romulans and everything that led to the Synth Band and all of that stuff. This was such a great ending to that particular storyline. But on top of that, to throw Data in there and to have this heartfelt, touching scene between these two characters. I'm definitely a Next Generation fanboy. I will admit that Next Generation is my favorite of all of the series. So I was definitely fanboying out on it a bit, but not just because it was just fan service with these two characters I love talking to each other, but it was just so poignant, so meaningful, and yeah, it did kind of really give Data a more proper death than Nemesis. Now, Nemesis, there wasn't a big problem with his death, except that they were definitely leaving that door cracked open for, Star Trek, the next Star Trek movie called The Search for Data, where and resurrect Data. I mean, that door was intentionally left open. So this felt like more of a proper death for Data, and the fact that they were able to tie it in so beautifully into Picard's story arc, I think this is why I probably am giving the show a higher rating than either you guys are or Cardinal Doomsday is. I think that is the thrust of it for me. There's actually something else we haven't talked about at all that I really thought.
Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead. What is that? Completely
off topic, but the Romulans and the fact that we actually spend some time on the Romulans, and I like that we do have the, we get a little bit, the Jatvash cult, even though I had my issues with them, and then we also get the nuns, different, how Star Trek always portrays one race as all of us are Klingon warriors. Every single Klingon is a warrior. And I always had an issue with that because the human race is so diverse with all different cultures within that same planet. And most races on Star Trek are always portrayed as our entire planet acts exactly like this. So I actually thought that was really well done and a really step forward for the Trek universe to actually show that one race has different cultures within it. So that has nothing to do with Picard, but that was the other thing I really loved about the series.
Well, we talked about that more in our mid-season discussion.
Yeah.
Because I completely agree with you. In fact, I've heard a few people being like, "Oh, these aren't the Romulans at all." It's like, you don't know what the fucking Romulans are because they were never developed. At least this show actually developed them and is giving them more texture.
Yeah, but back to the ending with Picard and Data. That was so good. But I don't totally disagree with you on the death thing. But I also I knew it was coming. I think the only way around that was to never have this whole storyline where he has the disease in the first place and just all of that. Because I don't know. I'm curious. I really want to see what the follow through is going to be in season 2. I definitely need to see some effect on the story of Picard being an android body, because if he's just back to normal again and they hardly ever mention that he's in an android body, I'm really going to not like that.
Yeah, I'm
probably going back to season 1 and saying that was bad.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. There's got to be some repercussions rather than everything. They just never acknowledge it.
Yeah, and it's just back to normal. Yeah, but anyway, I should let Don talk.
Yeah, Don.
So Picard is dead. Long live Jean-Luc Picard. Yeah, look, that was kind of weird for me because it's is this really Picard that we're going to be seeing going forward now? I mean, Mark, I know you were saying you were kind of annoyed at the fact that he lived a full life and now he kind of gets to live longer. I mean, look, they said that they just gave him however much time he would have had if he didn't have the aromatic syndrome. So it's not like they're giving him this vast extension on his life. He's still gonna die probably in 10 years. Yeah,
that was a nice little convenient plot point they put in there.
I mean, but look, I don't know. I had issues with the fact that he now is an android, and I want to see if in season 2, if they're going to address that, and if people are going to question whether or not he's truly Picard. I mean, since he's fought so hard for Data in the episode of Measure for a Man, he, this season a lot was about him reconciling what happened at the end of Nemesis. I want to see what's going to happen in terms of, will people other than his new crew accept him as truly being Picard? Because that's the thing where
obviously Don, because he says engage at the end of the episode.
I mean, well, no, that's his crew though. That's his crew. I mean, but now when he meets up with Will Riker again, does he say to Riker hey, I'm not exactly the guy? Because first off, if you look younger, right? He looks younger in the android body. So somebody's got to remark on the fact that it's hey, last time I saw you, you looked this way. How do you now look younger? And well, I did die, and Data's brother, Lore? No, his biological brother from Dr. Soong, who's also Dr. Soong, built me a body. Oh, so your brain is in there? No. They just scanned my brain and it's all organic, part synthetic. Oh God, this reminds me so much of Mass Effect. Yeah, so do they have to address that? They can't just leave that as is. I'm wondering how they address it, and is that going to be a thing for the next season where he has to come to grips with the fact that whether or not he feels real.
Yeah, some people argue that maybe he's just a copy of Picard. That could be a philosophical point.
And I want them to address it.
Yes.
They have to. Like Don said, they have to address it. If they just go on and pretend like everything's normal again, I'm going to be really annoyed.
Yeah. I want to address what Colonel Doomsday said in the chat. It said, you can't kill Picard. It's like killing Sherlock Holmes and Doctor Who, whatever, etc. I got news for you, Colonel Doomsday. As much as I wish this wasn't the case, Patrick Stewart is not immortal. So I wouldn't really have a problem with this, with them killing Picard. Plus, as I said, I think it would work for the story that they set up. And I do think the story's undermined by him surviving. But, the show's not called Star Trek Data or Star Trek Rios. It's called Star Trek Picard. So they have to keep him alive.
Are we going to talk about the synth band?
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to talk about next before we go, because I am sorry, but I don't buy, like, it happened all way too quickly. And plus, I didn't even buy that Starfleet was willing to send so many ships to protect the synths. There was a synth ban, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, this is under our protection and it's part of the Federation. I'm like, how do you have that complete 180 turnaround just from one conversation with Picard and Clancy where she tells him to shut the fuck up? Like, and plus, like, they said, oh, the ban is lifted, everything's okay now. Like, what? Like, the whole thought that Raffi was saying that the Romulans were the cause of the Mars attack, not the Synths, was a conspiracy theory. She was considered a nut job. Nobody believed her. And now all of a sudden, like, it's people, after 14 years of having this hard proof that the Synths were evil, they're just going to be like, snap their fingers and be like, actually, they're okay now. Let's protect them. Like, everyone's going to be okay with this. I'm sorry. I thought that was some bullshit right there, but anyway, Afkin, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I actually said that during the Clancy scene on my review initially. Like, I don't understand why she agreed to that. I mean, it made for a great scene. Her telling him to shut the fuck up, but there's a synth ban. Like, why would she agree to send starships to protect the synths? Like, I don't know. Again, this speaks to it being a little rushed, and from a like storytelling perspective, I do understand. Like, okay, we got to wrap up the season and say there's some ban's been lifted. But it wasn't really earned. It definitely, I think it would have made more sense if they had a line like, well, we have, they said that we're allowed to travel while Starfleet and the Federation discusses what's going to happen with the synth ban. While they're in negotiations, they've given us leave to travel freely while they're figuring it out, or something like that. Like, more like Federation is working on it. I think would have been a better line than, oh, the synth ban has been magically lifted now. Like, it definitely was too quick, and I definitely don't buy it.
And I think there should have been a scene where Picard and Raffi like had to present their evidence and prove that that it wasn't the synths responsible for Mars and stuff.
Yeah.
They just accepted it way too easily.
Yeah.
And it's part of the whole thing about the finales being rushed.
Yeah.
I mean, well, see, honestly speaking, I thought that maybe some time had passed.
No, the whole Game of Thrones excuse. Oh, that's why they're able to travel. Time has passed off screen.
No, honestly, that's what I thought. I thought the time had that some time had. Like, trust me, I am definitely not trying to make any excuses for.
Yeah.
So I honestly thought that maybe like a couple of weeks had passed. And maybe during that time, after the discovery of the treachery of Commodore O and all that, they were kind of like, oh, wow. Yeah, we maybe kind of fucked up here.
See, sure. But even if that is the case, like, they can't have, it's just jarring from a storytelling perspective. You can't, like, in the same way it was with Game of Thrones, you can't explain it away to be like, oh, time had passed off screen. You guys didn't see it. No, bullshit. We need to see it. You can't just say, oh, time has passed and all this stuff has happened.
No, listen, I get it. Like I said, for me, the one of the big things, because remember, Picard died. There was an acknowledgement of Picard's death, and then he was brought back to life as the synth, and I thought that maybe it had just taken some time, and then the time that it had taken between Picard actually dying and then bringing him back, and then maybe like another week or two, they had possibly lifted the synth ban. Now, mind you, still quick, because I think that's something that probably would have taken months, of debate, people going back and forth, hard feelings over, whoever, might have lost loved ones during that time, and whatever. So even if it had been weeks, still would have been too short of a time. But I just honestly myself thought that maybe some time had passed, but not like a long time. Like I said,
Yeah, but even as I said, even so, that's something we need to see. Like they can't just say, yeah, I don't know. It just seems way too quick from a storytelling perspective. Also, I bring up another point I wanted to discuss about before we end is the oh fuck, I lost my train of thought. Apkin looked like he had something to say.
No.
Nope. Okay. Well, I lost my train of thought though. There was something that you touched on that I really wanted to talk about, but I completely forgotten it now.
I can say something else.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
I just kind of wonder what the purpose of this crew's existence is now.
That's a good point.
Is that something that's going to be defined in season 2, or are they just going to be flying around for no reason? Because the whole point of them was to go and save Soji. And now that that's accomplished, now they seem to be a crew. 7 of 9's a part of it. She's sitting there hitting buttons, and they're going to go off together to somewhere.
It'll probably be, something having to do with the Fenris Rangers. Raffi finally getting to repair her relationship with her son because she gets to say, hey, look, I was right the whole time. Look, it's on the Federation News Network, and maybe some other hijinks. Honestly speaking, I'm hoping that they go back to more of the episodic Trek, where it's the adventure of the week rather than the overarching story, because the overarching story took too long until they decided to rush towards the ending.
I don't know. I prefer the overarching stories to the week-to-week stuff, but they need to do a better job at it, and it needs to be more consistent.
Yeah. I'm definitely very anti-episodic shows at this point.
I mean, but look, Deep Space Nine, I think, did a great job of doing, like kind of a mix of both, where a lot of it was episodic, but they still had an overarching story with regards to, like the Dominion Wars, where like not everything was all right. We're in the Dominion War.
Well, to be honest, that annoyed me. Every episode had nothing to do with the Dominion War. I'm like, isn't there a war on? Why are you guys just fucking around playing baseball in the Hollis Suites? Like, isn't there a fucking war on? So I actually like a season to be more focused.
I think there is a way to do it. I think there might be a way to do it, but I mean, it's just, I don't know. It was like I said, the first half of the season seemed to drag on, and then when they got to like the last like 3 episodes, it was like, oh, we only got 10 episodes. Shit, thought we had like 13. All right, we got to wrap this up now.
No, I agree. They need to do a much better job at it. I don't think they need to ditch the serialized format, but they need to do a better job at pacing. And pacing was the issue with Discovery too. I think that is just the newer Treks, and part of it is because they try to make things too complicated. I think they throw too much in there that they don't need, and they, I don't know. A lot of stuff just felt anticlimactic to me this season. But anyway, I can't remember what I was going to talk about. So let's go ahead and wrap this discussion up. Now, I am going to make myself a liar. I'm going to contradict myself because I am going to ask you for a rating 1 to 10 for Picard season 1. And I'm going to give, I think I decided while we're talking my rating, I'm going to give this a 6. I don't think it's quite a 7. I think there's enough awesomeness in this to give it a positive score, but there's way too much about the cohesiveness and the pacing and just so many plot holes that really hold this back. I think there was a lot of potential here, and it's just totally my guess, but if I were going to guess, I think there's studio interference was involved and all of the mess and inconsistency. But anyway, Atkin.
I knew you were going to ask for reading. I've been thinking about it this whole time. As I said in the beginning, I think the main storylines, the thrust of the show, if you just look at it from a general perspective, I loved. It's when you start to like hone in a little bit, zoom in on it, I guess would be the word. Zoom in on some of the details. That's where I see a lot of problems with it. But the Picard story from beginning to end was amazing. The fact that they're doing these different Romulans, part number 2, or point number 2, that I thought was better than anything else Trek has done, as far as alien species go. So I've been actually teetering between the 7 and an 8, and I'm going to cheat a little bit because I do give 0.5, so I'm going to say 7.5.
All right, Don.
I'm gonna give this one a 7. I mean, look, I think.
Well, I'm the lowest. I'm surprised. Anyway.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, like I said, I didn't hate this series at all. I mean, did it have problems? Yes. Was it basically Mass Effect? And I'm telling you, especially like the end with the beacon and the tentacles coming out of the beacon. I was like, oh my god, if EA or BioWare doesn't sue the shit out of Paramount for this,
CBS.
CBS, that's right, yeah, CBS, CBS Viacom, whatever the hell it's called now. All right, yeah. The point is, yeah, this is definitely something that I've seen before. I think it pulled it off just a tad bit better than the Mass Effect because the end of Mass Effect was absolute trash. So I'm glad they weren't as ambitious, with their ending, and the fact that we don't get left on a cliffhanger. Now, yeah, of course, it does have the issues with, like, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't a big fan of the portrayal of the Romulans in this series, only because it was such a high departure from what we've seen from them before. And I get it, you don't want to see the monolithic cultures on there. There should be room for it to grow. But I think that, like, especially for the Romulans who were on the Borg cube, I think they should have been classic looking Romulans. Me personally speaking, I think have them as the classic looking Romulans. Have your Tal Shiar, have the Zhat Vash and whoever. Have them look different. But I think there still should have been some classic Romulans just to anchor us to the world that we've already known before. If I may, real quick, I just want to. I've talked about this a couple of times before, but I hadn't really went into like in depth with it, and that is what I think that some fans who were fans of like older Trek have issues with the newer Trek, and that is, it feels like some of the older characters get dumbed down a little too much in order to make the newer characters look like they're more smart than they actually are. Like, for example, Picard spent a lot of time kind of getting verbally smacked around by people in this series. And other than when it was Deanna Troi kind of sitting him down and you're like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? You had Admiral Clancy, you had Raffi, you had even whatchamacallit from Elnor's people with the absolute candor thing. And as messed up as it might seem, I think a lot of newer Trek does seem to be a little gender biased against men. I don't know if you guys have noticed that at all.
Well, I completely disagree with you.
I mean,
I've heard that argument, and I completely disagree with it.
I mean, no, I'm not saying that it is a factual thing. I'm saying that if you look at, take some of the parts of what they've done, like for example with the Romulan stuff, right? All of the people who were in higher positions in the Romulan hierarchy during this whole thing were all women, right? The only admiral that we run into, no, the two admirals that we run into, with the exception of Picard, were both women in Starfleet.
Yeah.
Right? Who else was it?
Well, all right, here's my counter to that. In the past, shows that came out in the 90s and 80s and before that, all these characters would be male. So is that is that sexist towards women? Is that degrading women?
I'm not saying that. Now, mind you, there have been female admirals in other Trek series before. So it's not as though there haven't been any women in command positions at all before. But if it they
have been predominantly male though, and I think having them be predominantly female, I don't have an issue with that.
It's not even that that's predominantly female; they're all female. If you think about it, take all.
Well, you got Picard, you got Riker, and Rios is the captain of the freaking ship they're on. So I don't know. Like,
I mean, I'm talking about with the exception of the actual the main crew, where it's like, yeah, of course not Riker. Of course, Picard is in charge because Picard is his show. You can't have someone else be in charge on the show that's called Picard. It's not going to make any sense. But everyone in the command structure above him that we actually met on screen were all women. And again, I'm not saying that it's right that people have these complaints. I'm just saying, okay, I see what it is that they're saying now, where before I was kind of like, what are you talking about? And it wasn't until this series that I actually
see. Well, I'm just not going to agree with you on this one.
I'm not saying that the argument is a correct argument. I'm saying I understand that. I understand now why they make that argument. I'm not saying the argument is correct. I'm just saying I see now why they make the argument.
I don't. I just completely disagree with them.
I'm definitely on Mark's side on this. I just want to throw that out there. But I also we could do a whole other discussion on this topic, and I actually do need to get going, guys. So
yes.
I have another online appointment at 7. I need to eat dinner. So
all right, so let's wrap this up. Again, thank you guys so much for coming, and thanks for your talk about the Picard. Hopefully, we can do this again soon. So anyway, real quick, what you're up to, where people can find you, Don.
I haven't been up to a damn thing. Here's the thing. So I now work for New York City Housing, Environmental Health and Safety, and we all know what's going on in the regular world. If you're watching this years later, we have a pandemic which will not be named because I don't want them to strike down Mark's video over that. But yeah, I'm kind of working on that right now, so I really haven't had much time, but I wanted to make the time to be here with you guys to discuss Picard because I love doing that. But hopefully once this whole thing is passed, I'll be back up and running and find something to talk about.
Great. Yeah, no, thanks for making the time. Absolutely. So, Akton, what you're up to, where people can find you?
Well, my real world job is not happening right now. I'm in school, so that gives me actually more time to do stuff for my channel. But I'm also trying to do a whole bunch of other stuff in my life too, not just this. So, but I'm doing. I'll be continuing to do weekly Westworld reviews. At some point tonight, I'm going to watch episode 3 of season 3, and I'll have that review out in the next couple days. So that's the main thing I got going on my channel. You can find me on Akton Tamko Tamko's channel, by the way. And then I got some other stuff. I think I got some other Star Trek stuff coming up. I am finishing up my rewatch of Discovery. I've got like 3 episodes left, so I'm going to definitely do some sort of videos. I'm kind of thinking about the format that I want to do for that, so I'm not going to make an announcement on it, but I'm definitely going to do something on that. And then at some point, I don't want to make any promises, but Mark, I think my Deep Space Nine Season 1 rewatch and then subsequent review will be probably sometime during this quarantine that's happening. Because Mark has been bugging me to rewatch Deep Space Nine for a while. So that's probably the next thing that's coming, Star Trek related. On my channel, and I have some other ideas from other fun stuff I might do since I have a lot of time on my hands. But so just keep an eye on my channel. Got Westworld and for additional Star Trek stuff coming up pretty soon.
Cool. Yeah, no, thank you guys so much, and thank you everyone in the chat for joining. So I'm Mark. My channel is Enchantment of Eternity. At the moment, I've done Picard. I am going to do a season-long video review for season 1. I'm also covering Better Call Saul. At the moment, doing that weekly, and also doing other things. I'm finishing up my Expanse Book to Show series, and once I'm done that, I'm going to get back to my episode reviews of Star Trek, random Star Trek episodes determined by user polls. So that's coming in about a month. And plus, I'm continuing my overall season-by-season review of Star Trek The Next Generation. I released my Season 1 review a couple weeks ago, and my Season 2 review is coming soon. At the moment, I'm watching Season 3, so keep an eye out for that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.